All right, now we can go to week 5. I'll pull up.
Let's start. Where do you want to start with week 5? Seahawks and Bengals?
That is definitely a good place to start. What do you have to say about that game?
Well, hey, Seattle blew a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. I think Cam Chancellor struggled after that great game he had last week. He missed a few open field tackles, and he wasn't the same Chancellor. Tyler Eifert pretty much one-upped him on that game.
Yeah, and give Dalton credit. Dalton had a phenomenal game.
Andy Dalton has surprised me. I think he's the most shocking performer of this season, of this young NFL season so far. I thought he's played real well. I've never been a huge Andy Dalton fan. I've always thought he's thrown way too many interceptions. But this year, certainly, he's getting the job done for the Bengals. Hugh Jackson is putting just enough on Dalton's plate, and Dalton's eating up, man. That offense with Dalton at quarterback, Marvin Jones at receiver, Mohamed Sanu, A.J. Green, obviously your big deep threat, and then, of course, tight end Tyler Eifert, who's emerging as one of the biggest stars in football, at least at the position.
Yeah, Tyler Eifert has definitely been a breakout tight end, and it's making the Bengals looking pretty good for getting rid of Gresham, letting him go.
And let's give some credit to this defense. Running back Marshawn Lynch didn't play. Rawls, I believe, replaced him, and he had a heck of a game. That was one of my performances of the week. But when it mattered, that defense was able to buckle down. And it's been a pretty good defense all year long. And I thought I had chose Seattle to win this game. But, man, give Cincinnati credit. And then Seattle drops to 2-3. With Arizona winning, they're now 4-1, I believe. So Seattle is two games back of the division.
I mean, if you're Seattle, you got to be looking at this fortunately. Just think, had they got that call right last week in the end zone, Seattle could be looking at 1-4 right now.
Fair enough. That would be quite the debacle. Although they probably would have lost last week had they got the call right.
Yeah, so moving on, you want to talk about that Green Bay St. Louis game? We were almost pretty right on the spot with that.
Yeah, 24-10. This game, I think this game was closer than what the scoreboard suggests. It was a chippy game, I think, on both sides. I think the Rams' defense did well. But, they did similar to the Niners like last week. They just didn't put up enough points to really be in it.
Yeah, definitely. The Rams' offense struggles. You got to give credit to the Green Bay's defense. And I know Todd Gurley went nuts, but when you look at it, Todd Gurley really only had he had 3 decent-sized runs, and then he had that one big one. That's what gave him all the yardage. Green Bay actually did hold him in check pretty well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that starts up front with Mike Daniels. I think he's really coming around. I know 2 years ago, I think it was, he had a really good year. Kind of underperformed last year, but I think he's doing a great job in the middle. And then, of course, Clay Matthews. They're moving him around all over the defense.
I mean, I think you got to be looking at that Packers pass rush as being one of the best in the NFL. It's certainly close to Rams quality and Buffalo quality.
Yeah, and the back end I think is doing well too with Shields and Micah Hyde back there, I believe, right?
Yep. Shields had a phenomenal game, even though he didn't get an interception. He had a few big breakups. I know he had one big deflection in the end zone.
Yeah, that's the thing with cornerbacks. The box score and stats don't always tell the story. With football, because those things, passes defended, all those things, good coverage on a receiver don't show up on the stat sheet at the end of the game, but certainly it shows you how well some of these guys are doing.
And Rodgers finally ended his streak on a tipped pass. It was definitely a phenomenal play. I believe it was Laurinaitis who dove and picked that off.
Yeah, and it was tipped by a defender, right? And then he just intercepted. It wasn't dropped by a receiver, correct?
Correct. I mean, that's just a phenomenal defensive play. That's nothing on the quarterback. That's not on the quarterback. And then I believe the second one, I just think it was a poor play call that he threw, and it was just a phenomenal pick. But I believe the replay refs got that one wrong. If you looked at the replay, he actually kind of traps the ball. He gets the ball, and the ball hits the ground, and then it clearly moves in his hands. I did discuss this with my dad. My dad does replay for Big Sky, and he actually believes they got it wrong too. Well, what's your thoughts on that?
So it should not have been an interception?
No, if you look at, you can even kind of look at, I wouldn't say it's Des Bryant like. Well, I mean, it sort of is, but I just don't think it was a catch. If that ball contacts the ground, comes loose in his hands, I mean, all turnovers are reviewed, but I don't know what he was looking at.
Yeah, I didn't see the play, so I wouldn't know. Rodgers, he was 19 of 30 on the day. He had 241 yards and 2 touchdowns as well as those 2 interceptions. But, give credit to this Green Bay defense. I think this was a good victory for the Packers, but good performance by the defense as well.
I mean, and a lot of people are undermining their offense's performance. They were driving a few times. The Rams just came up with some big stops, and they got a few phenomenal turnovers. The Green Bay's offense really wasn't that bad that game. They weren't at their best, but they weren't terrible.
No, and this is a Rams team. They're only allowing, I think, 20 points per game, but they're only scoring 16 points per game, and they only give up like 230 yards in the air. So this is a good Rams defense, but they need an offense to complement them.
Yep. Moving on, we have a big injury this week. Jamal Charles against the Bears. That definitely shaped the outcome of that game.
A torn, I believe it's an ACL, and as a Raider fan, I hate the Chiefs, but I hate to see something like this happen and affect them. Now the Chiefs are 1-4, I believe.
Yep, that injury impacted that game. The Chiefs probably would not have given up that lead.
No, and the Bears wouldn't have come back. The Bears have won 2 in a row. That's an impressive victory in Kansas City. But, man, how about that? That's a big loss for Andy Reid and his Kansas City Chiefs. At this point, I think the division's out of hand. I unfortunately chose them to win the division. I really thought with that defense and with the acquisition of Jeremy Maclin, Travis Kelce, DeAnthony Thomas, obviously Jamal Charles, got all these guys, plus the defense, man, the way Denver's playing right now, Denver is playing crap football. I guess they're undefeated, yeah, but they're playing terrible.
I mean, you look at it, that game the Raiders had in hand, Janikowski choked. You had
missed 2 field goals. One was blocked.
That pick six wasn't even Carr's fault. The receiver stopped his route.
So, yeah, exactly. That on the stat sheet that goes as an interception, but really, I didn't think that was Carr's fault at all. He anticipated the receiver to be looking for the football, and Chris Harris Jr., the great cornerback he has, anticipated that, and that really swung the tide as far as momentum goes. The Raiders' defense, I thought, played a hell of a performance, but, man, they just were not able to cash in offensively. And Denver, give them credit. They're undefeated now, but at this point, I think they would lose to any AFC playoff team, even at home. Oh, yeah, definitely.
When you look at can compete with the Patriots, I think the only answer there is Cincinnati. Cincinnati's the only one who really has the chance. I mean, I would actually say the Jets might be a surprise there, too. They may be able to.
I would go with the Jets. Yeah, I think the Jets, too. The Jets' defense with their front four, one of the better fronts in the league, as well as their secondary with Cromartie, Revis, Gilchrist, and safety Calvin Pryor. I think that defense is good enough to compete. I actually have them beating New England in New York. The Jets play New England pretty physically, and they always seem to make that matchup tough for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I wouldn't be surprised if they win that. I think they'll probably get a wild card. Then that has the second wild card up for grabs. Who do you think? Well, let me get your 2 opinions for those wild card spots.
So for AFC wild card spots,
at this point in the season, I know it's early.
At this point, I'm leaning towards Buffalo. I mean, they're 3-2. They're projected in that spot. I just don't see anyone, like, a lot of these AFC teams are kind of mediocre.
At this point, yeah, I agree with you.
I would be leaning towards Buffalo. They squeaked out a win against Marcus Mariota. Mariota they played really good defense, and in the end, picking off Mariota to end that one, it was definitely a phenomenal comeback by Buffalo. What else? I mean, I actually kind of think Cleveland might have an outside shot.
Really? They had a gutsy performance. They won 33-30 against Baltimore. Josh McCown sets the record for most yards in a game by any Cleveland Browns quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. What he had? I'm looking at the stats right here. He had 457 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yeah, and you know what? If you asked me 2 weeks ago, who I thought should be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, I would have told you Johnny Football. But at this point, I think they got to stick with Josh McCown. So hey, props to Mike Pettin for standing by his decision rather, and they have their quarterback. I guess they play Denver next week in Cleveland. I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland eked out a victory. If they can put 33 points up, they should be able to beat Denver.
Yeah, Cleveland definitely has a shot. And, again with Manziel, I think Manziel is going to be their quarterback for the future. It's good that he's getting some time to kind of reflect on this, and it may motivate him a little more too, don't you think?
I think so too. I think all the time that he can get behind McCown and on the sideline, learning to interpret defenses, and just the more experience that he gets in the NFL. Now, really, the only way you get better is by reps, but certainly it won't hurt sitting on the bench and learning the Browns system. It'll just give him more experience and more understanding of that offense.
Yeah, definitely. And any other games, just kind of go over quickly. Giants somehow squeak out a win against San Francisco. Their defense definitely did not step it up in the end. And one thing I've noticed with San Francisco, their defense has been phenomenal at home, but on the road, fourth quarter, it just...
Yeah, and they were in a tough spot here. I think the Niners had the ball with 2 minutes to play at the 2-yard line of the Giants, and there's not a whole lot you can do. It's kind of awkward. You can play for the tie and take out all the clock and go into overtime, or you can try to score a touchdown, but then again leave the Giants with plenty of time. And I think they had 2 timeouts, the Giants did, remaining. So it's a tough position that they had on offense there. I think Kaepernick played well. I think he had a solid game. He didn't have any interceptions, which is a good thing for him. Now, is he still missing throws? Yes. Is he still looking uncomfortable in the pocket? Yeah. Is he getting happy feet in the pocket? Yes. But he had made some nice plays. He had one deep ball to Anquan Bolden, which was his best ball thrown all season, in my opinion. But, there's no moral victories in the NFL, but hey, if you're a Niner fan, Colin Kaepernick had a pretty good game, so that's a moral victory in itself.
Yeah, I'd say he had a pretty good game, too. Also, one thing you have to look at, the Giants' front seven really didn't get much pressure on him.
No, not at all.
If you're a team, you're going up against the Niners, if you can put pressure on Kaepernick, then it shows. You look at the end, right after the Giants went down and scored, and, Niners had barely time. That was the Kaepernick we've been seeing for the past 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. Right, that last section right there, that's what we've seen. It wasn't pretty.
Between Prince Amukamara and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, they have pretty good corners, but as you mentioned, there's really no pass rush up there. Middle linebacker John Beeson is one of the better middle linebackers in the game, but up front, without O.C. Umenyiora, there's really no pass rush, and against Kaepernick, like you said, that's one of the keys is you can make him feel uncomfortable in the pocket. Do so by bringing pressure, but where defenses get in trouble against him is bringing too much pressure and the pocket collapses and he steps up and runs. Cuts it down and run.
All right, I think that pretty much does it for this week. One last thing to cover. Chargers blow it again. Giving up a late touchdown to Pittsburgh. A little disappointing right there. Almost had that pick right, but come on.
I think San Diego's a mess. I had Pittsburgh in that game, I think.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed. I had a pretty good week picking teams, though. But, man, come on, San Diego.
Just couldn't get the Monday night game. I saw the last play of that game, and it was a Wildcat direct snap to Le'Veon Bell, and he scored. Gutsy call there by the Steelers. But, Steelers win. That's a good victory for them. Chargers dropped to 2-3. They're now tied for second, I think, in the division with the Raiders.